Hello, everyone. This is Sean Kitchen from the Region Chicken Press. This past weekend at the Keystone Progress Summit, I had the opportunity to interview Elizabeth Fiedler from South Philadelphia, Sara Innamorato from Pittsburgh, and Summer Lee from Braddock, Pennsylvania. All three of these women are challenging or primarying House Democrats in the Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh areas, and they're running a grassroots small dollar donation campaign. If you listen to the interview all the way through, you'll find out at the end where you could find their websites, where you could find their Twitter handles. I suggest everyone do so. And please sit back, enjoy, and have fun with the interview. Talk to everyone later. Hello, this is Sean Kitchen with the Region Chicken Press. We were at the Keystone Progress Summit with Elizabeth Fiedler, Sara Innamorato, and Summer Lee, who are all challenging Democratic House members in Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh area, or the Allegheny County areas. Let's just start in a circle, and why we're all running. Elizabeth?
This is Elizabeth, and I am running because I believe that healthcare is a human right. Access to good schools is a human right, and I'm really dedicated to fighting for those things. I have 2 little kids, and we really struggled to get health care for our family. One of my children gets health insurance through CHIP and one through Medicaid, and I get it through the marketplace, and I found it really, really outrageous how hard it's been for me and for so many of my neighbors who I've talked to. And I really think that we can do better, and we need to do better.
Mm-hmm. So this is Sara. I echo everything that Elizabeth just said. I lost my father to an opioid addiction, and I think it's been 10 years since his death, and we haven't come up with comprehensive legislative solutions to address the crisis in a compassionate and comprehensive way. And it needs to extend beyond just treating drug addiction and mental health afflictions, but making sure that every single person has access to health care. I also live in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood where home prices have quadrupled in the last 10 years. So I think the state can play more of an active role in making sure that housing is a human right.
Hi, this is Summer. So I'm running because in a community like where I'm from, underserved communities, communities with a large population of people of color, especially people of color who are also poor. You see, we have these cyclical issues, and we have concerns that go beyond just one thing at a time. In my community, representation is so important because folk with our perspective and folk who have our lived experiences in our community are never the ones who are creating policy. So when we talk about some of the things that have affected me personally in my life, I haven't had insurance. There's been times in my life where I haven't had health insurance. I came from an underserved public school that was under-resourced, that have so many problems just because we have lack of representation in school staff and folk who look like us who can be examples for us. We have housing issues. We have food deserts in my community. We have a medical desert in my community. We have environmental hazards in my community. And all these things combine to keep us out of the race. And I'm running because I felt like if we couldn't get someone like us from our experience in Harrisburg and further up and across the line, across the board, on councils, school boards in Harrisburg and House seats in Congress, if we can't get those folk that understand the issues the way we understand them, no one's going to look out for us when it comes time to creating policy and distributing resources.
Okay. Now, thank you very much. One of the key points I guess I want to start off with, why are we choosing to run, or why are you all choosing to run in a primary versus in a, challenging Democratic candidates in a primary versus, obviously it's where you live in a district, mm-hmm. but one of the criticisms that, you talk to some of the people within the establishment, Democrats, like institutions or within unions, is that they're going to be wasting money defending these candidates where that money could be spent later on in the general elections. Like, why are you choosing to primary these candidates now? And then what's the importance of doing that?
So these candidates don't represent their constituency any longer, and that's the case. And they don't stand in the place where we want to stand with the issues. So I think, I'm running, and part of the district is in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is often elevated as the most livable city and a hub for innovation, and the mayor says, it's a city for all, but we're really leaving a lot of people behind in that progress forward. And if we are truly an innovative city, why aren't we being innovative with our elected offices? There's so much potential lost on these state level offices where we could really be engaging the community and having a consistent dialogue constantly, and being educating the electorate and getting feedback from the neighborhood so that we are constantly making sure that those voices are going to Harrisburg and informing the votes that are happening there.
This is Elizabeth. I would say being a Democrat is not enough. It was never enough to me, and it's not enough now. When I knock doors across the district, I hear from a lot of people who are really struggling, right? And they're terrified because they can't afford the medication that's going to help them treat diabetes. So they're afraid because they haven't had a job in a couple of years and they don't know what the future holds. And I got to say that when I talk to people and talk to them about why I'm running, I have not had a single person of all the people I've talked to, no one has said well, maybe you should just step back. Maybe we should just be okay with what we have now. Nobody has said that to me. And so I think that I think it's good that we're running. I think it's good to have more people running for office. Summer?
Yeah. So here's the thing, and to kind of feed off of what Elizabeth is saying, this is not a monarchy. No one has a right to these seats. These are people's seats. So if we really want to claim that we have a democracy and we want to have a robust democracy, we need two things. We need an educated electorate and we need competition. It's inexcusable, or really is just not helpful for the people, for our communities, to have politicians be able to sit in the seat for decades and never have anyone challenge them. This is the first time in some of our communities in Allegheny County where there will be another name on the ballot in over a decade. Mm-hmm. That's important. When it comes time to when we're on the doors, and it's great that we're on the doors, we get the opportunity to make our case, to reach the people. And I agree with Sara, where I think that the delegation is not as progressive as we are. I don't think the delegation reflects the constituents, especially when you come from a community like mine, where we've never had a black woman serve from Allegheny County in the state house. Obviously, there's room for improvement when that's the situation. We have to take into account that just because someone has a D in front of their name doesn't necessarily mean that they are just crowned forever. Even if you once were a wonderful candidate, if you once reflected the people's will more than you do now, there's always room for growth, and it's hard to grow when you don't have to be accountable. What we're doing here is we're holding folk accountable. They get to go to the doors just like we get to go to the doors, and they get to sell their case. They get to tell the people what they've been doing for the last 19 years. They get to tell them the wonderful things that they've been doing, and the people get to ask them what they haven't been doing, and they get to question that also. So I don't think it's enough to just say we're gonna waste resources by running these candidates and challenging people, but also, in our communities in Pittsburgh, we don't typically have Republican challengers. So if you don't run in the primary, that simply means that this person gets to stay in this seat until they die, until they decide to step down, or until they decide to do something else. And I don't see how that is beneficial to the party either.
Yeah. And if you have a Democrat in office, but that Democrat is not good on issues like women's reproductive health, on criminal justice reform, on the environment, on addressing economic and systemic inequalities, then what good is that Democrat in that seat?
And now, just for the record, that you, Sara, and Summer are both running against Paul and Dom Costa?
Yes.
Yes. Dom and Paul, okay.
I get Paul.
So, do you think that they are in those seats because they have the Costa name, which is prevalent in Western PA, which is also it's sort of politics we see, Republican or Democrat, across Pennsylvania, where if you have your last name's Greenleaf, you're probably going to get the Senate seat out in Pennsylvania, or if your last name's Corman, you get to become a senator in the Penn State area.
I don't know that Dom or Paul's history and how they came to be elected officials. What I can speak to is that, once folks have power, it's really nepotism flourishes and cronyism is the norm. So if it goes unchecked, then that becomes the norm, and that's what people are used to.
Yeah, and this is for any candidate. I don't think any candidate is only in because of their name or only in because of their money. Mm-hmm. I think when you look at some of the situations that we have with incumbents who have been in for a long time, particularly the ones that we are going up against, I think that this is a situation that they're on there because no one has ever run against them. If we're only running one candidate at a time, and then that candidate gets to determine how long they'll stay there or when they'll bestow upon someone else the opportunity to now run, of course they're on there.
Mm-hmm. And then, so I want to try to shift topics. One of the things I would like that you guys have, or you three have all done, is seek the endorsements of DSA chapters out in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, Democratic Socialists of America. So all three of our people who run our website all became DSA members within the past year. I became a DSA member at Charlottesville. That's what prompted me to join. Why seek the endorsements of groups like DSA or Reclaim Philadelphia and, the more progressive groups? Like, what's the importance of going after those organizations and seeking their endorsements for the primary or for a general election?
You have to go where the energy is. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of energy in groups that are self-forming, like the Democratic Socialists and Reclaim Philadelphia. Personally, I joined the DSA during the Bernie Sanders running in the primary, and I joined not because one day I read Marx and was like, this is for me. I was living the life as someone involved in community development and community organizing and on the ground, and seeing how folks in power were so disconnected to what was happening to people, and the fact that they were talking about those issues that I cared about. That's what led me to that group, because I didn't see, and I still don't see, the Democratic Party in Allegheny County, in the places that we live, on the ground doing the work. And I think if they were, then you wouldn't see groups like the DSA and Reclaim Philly coming up and kind of filling that gap to organize and engage folks who are doing the on-the-ground work with electoral politics.
I sought the endorsement of these groups and many, many more. Because I really firmly believe that we should all have access to high-quality health care and schools and clean water and clean air. And any group that agrees with me on those things and wants to go out and help me knock doors and help me win, yes, call whatever they want. I mean, Reclaim Philly specifically has really built itself up very fast and into a very impressive organization that's gotten, helped really strongly in recent elections to knock a lot of doors and help candidates win, and is now getting recognition from within the party itself, within the establishment. And I think that's so amazing, and I'm really honored to have their support.
Yeah, things like that is it's seeing is believing, right? If the Democratic Party and the establishment and the status quo and the way things have always been done, if they don't see another way that things could be done, it's harder for them to buy in. And so we saw with Larry Krasner's race in Philadelphia, is the power of the people. How many members are in the Reclaim Philly?
Sarah's taking over the interview.
300?
She's like, I'm just going to pivot. I'm going to ask you a question. You let me know. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
300 members.
300 members. That's amazing. And out in, in our little chapter of DSA in Pittsburgh, we have, I think, 450 dues-paying members. And, that's impressive.
Yeah. There were 200 people at our endorsement meeting. And
200 people got to vote.
200 people got to vote on the endorsement, and that's powerful. So for me, the movement is people. power is people. It's important that we work together, that we build each other up, because this can't exist without each part of this, each cog, has to go together. So how I even got into this is because I was organizing. I was organizing my own community and building these small groups that wanted to figure out how we can come together as a community and address some of the issues we had. And then I was also organizing with bigger groups like the Fight for 15. And what I noticed there, and just being a part of movements and being in activism, is that oftentimes we're fighting power, but we're not ever taking power. And it's kind of got to the point where it was like, you know what, we're almost there. We're there, we're fighting, we're doing what we need to be doing. And the next stage is that we have to not be afraid of political power. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to organize people, but we have to be able to organize people in a very particular direction. What direction are we moving? We can't organize people to be stagnant. We have to organize people to move and to move forward. So I just believe that the next stage in that was to move people into these positions of power so that we can play off of each other. I can't exist without them. I need them. I need people behind me, because I make it this joke, but I'm like, at any given time, anybody at any organization is Summer Lee. Do you have a pin on your Summer Lee? Because I represent the people. It's not my voice that matters. I'm just using my voice to amplify these folk. These are the folk in DSA and Reclaim Philly who are passionate, who are on the ground, who have an amazing vision for our future, and they aren't afraid to seize the moment and take it. They just need a little bit of power. They need a little bit more legitimacy. They give me legitimacy and I give them it, and we give each other it, and we move forward together. So that's why it's so important that we continue to get victories. The more victories that we see, the more victories that our organizations are able to get, the more folk who will come to us and look at us and say, what are some of these policies that you care about? We're ready to listen to you. Mm-hmm. Look at what you guys are able to do. They're going to come to us now, and they're going to take us seriously. Mm-hmm. And then as we build these organizations, we're going to be able to get people not just in state house seats. We're going to be able to get people in Congress. We're going to be able to get people across states and across cities to join into this movement, so that it's no longer just a movement; it's just the norm.
Mm-hmm. And then one last question I want to topic I want to touch on. Earlier today at the panel, earlier this morning, you all touched on the topic of economic justice and why that comes. There was issues about like social justice, but we were elaborating that it's economic justice that's first and foremost. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a union household, saw my dad's union get busted at a young age, and then saw like the devastation that could bring to a household for someone going making $50,000 a year to 15 or 20. I'm sure that's pretty much the same story that we all share or have lived through or know people who have lived through. Why is it economic justice that comes first and foremost?
Because I think, this is Elizabeth, when people have economic insecurity, when they're thinking about how they're going to buy groceries or how they're going to be able to afford to go to the doctor or how they're going to afford daycare, it's harder to think about anything else, right? When that is your daily struggle, is how you're going to afford to survive, how you're going to be able to do that for yourself and your family, then it's harder to focus on other things, on these big picture things, right? On fights for health care, on mobilizing politically. So I think that we need to address this, like $15 minimum wage, supporting unions, strengthening unions' rights, making sure everyone can join a union. Both my parents were also union members, very proud union members. They went on strike with their union. I personally have never been part of a union. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot about this and hear a lot about it from people in my district, too, who talk about the importance of union power and, right, like building up your voice. As an individual, it's harder to fight against the boss, but if you're together, then you can do that.
Yeah. I was the first person in my family and my mom's side to go to school, to go to college, because, right, I was told that you're smart and this is how you get out of poverty. You go and you get an education, and then when you graduate in 2008 and there's no jobs and you're still doing the same hustle that you feel like you've been doing since you were 16 years old, and having to just piece together the certain jobs that, overwork you and underpay you, and you don't even know that unions are a thing because you're just working 70 hours a week, making just above minimum wage. You're working 3 different jobs. And to see that not only do we have to protect unions and the right to organize, but we need to expand on that. It is not just enough to protect what we have. As Democrats, we should be saying, how do we expand workers' rights? How do we unionize service workers? And how do we make more democratic workforces across the spectrum?
Yeah, so obviously I come from a demographic of people who historically don't have wealth. We have not had access to wealth and economic growth and upward mobility. And even when you look at unions, sometimes we have a strained relationship with unions because historically we haven't been able to get in them. So sometimes we don't even understand the importance of that. We need economic redistribution because if this is a cycle, we don't even have a starting point. So when we're looking at unions, and when I was working for the Fight for 15, and I'm talking to these people, to working class people who don't believe that they deserve more, who have no clue how they can even begin to go to their boss and say, boss, I need this. I need hours. Like these are folk who, week after week, they don't even know what their hours are going to be, so they can't even plan ahead. They can't schedule a doctor's appointment. They can't think about their kids' schooling because they have no protections on the job. So it's kind of like the situation where, honestly, we have a society where capitalism is for the rich. And capitalism is for the person who's winning. It's not necessarily for you, which is why we need to strengthen these unions. We need folk to be able to collectively bargain. We need protections to ensure that people can take time off when they need to. But a $15 minimum wage, honestly, in 2018, actually, it still isn't enough. And just like Elizabeth said, with 715 or 725 in my community, we talk about why parents aren't more politically engaged. How do we get people to be on Democratic committees and run for office? If we're making $7.25, I don't even have time to think about that. We're working 2-3 jobs. We don't have that leisure time to be active, engaged citizens and other aspects of life. So before we can even talk about how we can be participatory citizens and civically engaged and educationally engaged, we have to talk about how do we ensure that you can live, that you have a living wage, that you have protections on your job.
And when we talk about like women's rights and even racial justice, we know that when black folks and people of color and women are a part of unions, they tend to make more on average. So it's all of these movements need to be united in a movement for economic and towards economic justice.
Anything else?
And then even further, like it kind of brings to the surface, even when we talk about the wage gap within genders, and we talk about how the work environment and a lack of economic justice kind of forces us to never even discuss our paycheck. And people don't even think that they can discuss their paycheck. So you'll have a coworker who came at the same time as you, and you have no idea if they make way more or way less than you, because we've been frightened into ever talking about these things. So how do we then discuss it and move these conversations forward? Economic justice is something that permeates throughout every other aspect of your life. But we also know that women and people of color are hit hardest by a lack of economic justice.
And they're the ones who make up the lowest paid sectors and also the fastest growing sectors.
Service workers, nurses.
So one last go around, if you want to throw out your website or social media where anyone can find you, what can we do?
What can we do?
Where can they find you? How they can contact with you on social media, or if they're interested in doing like small dollar donations or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Elizabeth. Find me. Contact me. My website is Elizabeth, followed by my last name, which is Fiedler.com. That's my website. And social media is my last name. Fiedler, Fiedler, number 4, Philly. Philly. Find me, contact me, come knock doors. Small dollar contribution, that's how we'll win this. Come join us.
No corporate dollars. This is Sara Innamorato. I keep it easy. My website is Sara4PA, SARA, 4PA.com. Because no one can spell my last name, my Twitter handle is @Innamo, INNAMO. On Instagram, it's @Sara4PA, and we're also on Facebook.
I thought it was Inamo.
Oh, no, Innamo.
Learn something every
No,
day.
in high school, people used to call me Innamo because they couldn't see my last name.
Okay, Inamo. This is Summer, spelled like the season. Summer like the season. You can find me on all social media platforms at Summer for PA. We spell for so SUMMERFORPA.com. If you want to check out our platform, that's on there. You can go to Facebook.com/Summer for PA. You can go to Instagram, Summer for PA. You can go to Twitter, Summer for PA.
Better branding.
Yeah,
I know. So
streamlined.
Summer for PA for everything. You can find us. I believe in small dollar donations also, but if you're not a corporation, you can give big dollar donations also.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate taking the time, and we'll get this up, and looking forward to the fundraiser tonight.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.